Hi, my name is Simon Hedley, known to my clients and partners as a Strategic Alchemist and an ultimate connector. I'm a chartered accountant who brings together and bridges the worlds of business philosophy, finance, marketing, optimization, ontology, and so much more. Always focused on one thing, the simple idea that can make the difference to people and projects so we can tip the scales in their favor and get them complete. Pause, Stop, Reset is all about the three little words that can make the difference. They have for me and my clients, and I hope they will for you too. During the show, you'll get to learn about my guests' real-life experiences and the insights and lessons they've learned as they've navigated the resets in their personal and business lives, which you'll be able to leverage yourself. So let's start the show. Hello and welcome back to Pause, Stop, Reset, the show where we drop the mask and get real about life's journey. Today I'm joined by Brad Cohen. I met Brad in Puerto Rico just recently and was really blown away by his company, Autonomy Works, all about helping train and work with people with autism. But I think much more than that, he's got a really great life story I hope to learn about today on the show. So Brad, without further ado, welcome to Pause, Stop, Reset.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really looking forward to this because I sort of saw you. I was like, wow, that guy's amazing. We never had like the deep one-to-one time, right? So let's start with the basics. Brad, what are you up to today? Who is Brad Cohen and what are you focused on?
Well, thanks, Simon. Yeah, the cruise, we actually met on a cruise out of San Juan that a friend of mine, I guess a mutual friend, had been putting together and building it up to, I think, 400 or 500 people that are sort of in this social club have been, part of. And I was a little nervous going into, oh boy, on a cruise with the same people, but I really enjoyed it. And it was almost too many people to meet that you want to talk to. And, a lot of times it's at social gathering, outdoor spaces and music and whatever. And a lot of times it's just a really nice thing to have a short conversation with, and then hopefully go from there. But anyway, I enjoyed the cruise and meeting people like you, Simon. And I found it to be really, really fun. What I work on is what I was on the cruise for, to promote and just sort of socialize a social enterprise that I've been involved with for a long time. I've been advocating for the employment of adults on the autism spectrum, and as a whole, just people that have disabilities or differences as a whole, as sort of a solution to not only their personal, have a job, make a living, their parents have their son, daughter, have a job, make a living, but also societal ill that it's an unproductive class or group of people that is very, very untapped. And that sort of narrative has really, really resonated with me. It kind of just caught me off guard. And I love promoting it. So should I just go to my story, or how do you want me to do this?
Yeah, so that's your main focus, right? Is his company Autonomy Works? That's your focus right now. Is that right, Brad? And I would say in the UK, the language you're currently using is neurodiverse. It's actually realized the biggest consulting firms in the world, like EY, like PwC, they're actually building out departments of neurodiverse people to get that creativity, because the creativity that we need. And I also think labels are a whole other conversation we can get into, but so that's really good. We're going to go through some chats now. So the one I like to sort of focus on is, obviously you're living in Puerto Rico now, 20 years, you've had that place, but what are the big shifts and reset Brad's been through? Like from where you were born to now, what are those sort of top 2 or 3 big shifts and resets?
So I'm from Chicago. I was born, raised, and live my other half of the year there, where I'm very fortunate, married, 3 adult children. Kids are gone. They're on the East Coast doing their own thing. But I discovered Puerto Rico about 20-ish and closer to 30 years, just as a place to vacation. And then maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I got involved in real estate down there when the economy was, a little more challenged than it is now. And there certainly were some great tax incentives, but I really enjoyed not only being there, but part of the culture, part of the social groups down there. There's a whole bunch of expats and all kinds of really interesting people, like you probably met on the cruise. And really my sort of life aha moment was, so take one step back. Grew up in suburban Chicago. I had a couple of entrepreneurial adventures in college, owned some bagel stores. That was a fun experience. But shortly after college, I went into the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and I was a commodity trader in the pits with a bright coat, screaming and yelling.
Wow. The real days, right? Trading places, buy long, short. Are you doing everything on the CME?
No, you really have to focus on one particular niche, one pit. They literally were these pits, and I chose the largest one, which was the S&P 500. I went in there in 1987, 88, excuse me, just after the big crash. Great time to start. It was really quiet then, but spent almost 30 years actually in the pit. The pits are gone now, but I still trade electronically, and I do have another business where I trade. That's part of my work. But as I was working in Puerto Rico and developing real estate, fixing up some old properties, renting them out, Airbnb was just kind of getting hot. After Hurricane Maria hit in 2017, that was really, really hard. Anyone who lived in Puerto Rico at the time, it was hard. It really kind of it was more than I ever imagined. And got the business back up, got the houses, fixed up and in a good place. And then I realized, I still trade, and one thing I like about trading is it's all on you. You're measured by your success, kind of in dollars every day. But I was kind of missing a piece, and I had served on the board of an autism related not-for-profit for 10 years at that point. A company that really speaks to me. It was founded by a really amazing guy who was my kid's math and science tutor in high school. Wow. So we meet this guy. He's this Israeli wonderful man who really taught my kids how to think about their schoolwork, how to solve problems, not necessarily how to just get an A or get through the question.
And that's very rare these days, right? Because usually it's like tick the boxes, get the SATs, not that creative thinking, that 3D thinking, the original proper teaching work.
It was, and I credit this guy. His name is Moshe Weitzberg. This truly amazing guy from Israel. And what really struck me was, first of all, the effect on my kids was, very profound. All three went and, got into great schools and did really well in high school and things like that, and ended up on a really great career trajectory. And I give a lot of that credit to him. I went to Indiana University, and I'm thankful they let me graduate, so I was not real academic. But Moshe really changed our lives in the sense that he really helped me get my kids to places that I wanted them to be. And he had a really profound problem. He had an adult son on the autism spectrum who was very, very noticeably autistic. And he would always tell me how smart his son was, but visibly you could really see the disability. In the way he spoke and the way he walked and the way he sort of, you would know fairly quickly. And yet he's very intelligent. And the disconnect for me was all the jobs that he was even possible for him to do were bagging groceries, and they were working in a restaurant, cleaning in the kitchen, or, super manual tasks. The thing that just was really profound to me, and this was certainly more Moshe's identifying this problem, was it was highlighting his son's weaknesses and not showing his strengths, which were his intelligence, his ability to focus, his ability to do a repetitive task over and over again with very, very high levels of concentration. So anyway, we started researching it, and we found out there was a company in Denmark called Special Eastern that was hiring adults on the autism spectrum to do software testing. And so Moshe, and one of the many times he was in my kitchen talking to me about what to do, he wanted to start a company. So I was a commodity trader, and I could raise some money, could advocate. And so we did just that, and the company started to grow and started to succeed. And then fast forward to, and this is all as a volunteer and a board member, fast forward to 2017, and after the hurricane, I really started to think, oh my God, what if I did that full time? So I went to work for a Spirit Tech for 5 years, and it grew, very nicely. Grew up to about 150 people working there, and I retired from there about a year ago. But it's still succeeding. It's still doing great. It's still providing those jobs. And more importantly, and I say that more importantly because it is a business. It's a not-for-profit, but it's a business. But it has to pay the bills with revenue from companies.
Love that.
Kind of like as you and I were talking just in the warm-up here, Bose was their biggest client, the headphone company. And the ability of the staff to identify problems, to be able to do a repetitive task. In other words, take a pair of headphones out of the box and connect them using Bluetooth, and then connect them to your phone and play music and all those different things, has to be done over and over again on all the different devices with multiple different, services, going through different browsers, going through different internet connections. All those things have to be tested. So when you take them out of the box, they work. So anyway, long story short is I got very involved in it. And after 15 years of being on the board and being an employee, I wanted to step back, and I did. And then about a year, 6 months later, maybe, I found another company that was a little more, a little less mature, smaller, and the owner of that firm, wanted me to see if I could help him grow. The company's called Autonomy Works, which is what I was speaking about on the boat. Very similar profile of a business. About 82 people. Every one of the employees is on the autism spectrum. We have about 10 people that are support staff, which really is managers, also people that provide a support role. That's kind of the part that I really love. And I'm not involved in it, but from a distance, I really love that. The point is to accentuate the talents and support the weaknesses. So in the case of autism, our employees generally like a very quiet place to work. Some like lower levels of light. Some like real, sort of privacy, so that maybe they want their own workspace, or they want to put a little, barrier around them, or they want to use a pair of headphones. And if you think about those accommodations, like that's really, really easy if it creates an environment where someone can be productive. So I really find that part amazing, and working in the environment that I do, I don't raise money, but I try to find work. And it's just the most simple thing. Who doesn't want someone who's talented to have a job?
No, I love that, Brad. And what's coming across to me is the genuine caring, the humanity of you, right? And that's what's rare. This isn't, we found the cheap labor force, we can do this. It's like, actually, there's this great resource. And doesn't it very cleanly, doing this thing to make it workable, isn't that hard to do if you actually care about the people and the product and resource? And this isn't some charity like we make socks. No, it's actually being helpful and working, and often with better skills. Many of the best coders I've known have been on the spectrum. Some of them hate dealing with interaction and conflict, right? You've been in business and trading. Was there any conflict on the exchange? Oh, yes. So that's not the environment that most autism people like to be in, with people shouting and getting those emotions going up. So no, I really get that. I'm going to move on, and we'll come back to some bits later on, I think. I like to distinguish these three aspects of pausing, stopping, and resetting. Pausing is when you put it down on a Friday, Monday, take it back up again, right? Sort of have a break, then go back to it. Stopping is, I did that for a while, never again. Like you're on the exchange in the pit, then you stop, don't do that anymore. And reset is whole new game. Which of those do you as personally, Brad, find the hardest? And why do you think that is?
Oh, I would say the reset, because I think we're all creatures of habit. And, the reset is sort of the, going out into a new lane. So, the one thing I like about sort of that catchphrase that you use, the pause I absolutely had. So I've had multiple pauses in my life. The first being when I decided to leave being a bagel store owner to go to commodity trade, which was, certainly going straight into the lion's den, but, turned out great. Super lucky to have had, friends who helped me and a positive experience. The second pause was when I decided to start investing in Puerto Rican real estate. Not the most traditional investment for a Chicago guy who didn't have a real estate background. And the third pause was when I decided to join, this mission as a full-time gig. It was really after the hurricane where I really, I love Puerto Rico. I love what I do down here. I like the construction aspect of it. I like the personal interactions with clients who, are renting your house and doing all that. But I started to think like, boy, I'm 62 years old now. At the time I was a little, maybe 5 years younger. Trading is all about yourself, and you're measured by if you make money, if you don't make money. This is different, and it gets such a great feeling to give back. And one thing I like to say, and I kind of speak about this, is philanthropy doesn't have to be only writing a check. So it's not a knock on writing a check. Like donate to whatever your cause is. Please do more. But it also can be volunteering your time, it can be volunteering or advocating with your network, or there's lots of ways to do it. And volunteering your time, which is what I really try to do. You can volunteer at a soup kitchen, and you can go in and you can help cook food or clean up and do it on a consistent basis, and that's meaningful. That is fabulous. In my case, I kind of feel like, let me use some of the things that I'm good at, which is networking and trying to find connections for this company. Let me use that to benefit the social enterprise. And there's so many ways to do it. Working in this field, I found attorneys who are happy to do the closing for free because they know the cause. I find accountants who are happy to come in and cut their rate for an audit, or help you with whatever sticky problems you have, or people in advertising that are like, okay, I'll show you how to do LinkedIn ads. Volunteering your expertise, now that's valuable.
No, I love it. And I definitely think those three things: money helps, every dollar, every pound helps. We have a project called A Pound for Life, Dollar for Life. People don't realize that single dollar can make the difference. You and I are sort of trading banking backgrounds. Part of my background was PwC, Morgan's, RBA, ABN AMRO. $1 short on a payment, that could literally have you lose out the entire trade. It's just a dollar. Yeah, but when it's ISDA contracts, it matters, right? So the single dollars make a difference. The pay it forward time and energy, 100%. Sometimes just simply checking in, like with autism and other things, having somebody just going, how are you doing today, for 2 minutes can make all the difference, especially in the magical chaos world we are today, entrepreneurship, that sort of human, how are you caring? Jeffrey, you might have met Jeffrey Hazlett on the cruise. So his podcast talks about it. When he's going through a rough time, one of his friend's dads called him up, and that literally got him through that dark night of the soul moment, right? It's that friendly, how are you doing? I've got your back, you're okay. Not the check, but the actual human caring can help us get through. And using what you're good at, going back to the source and going, I've got this skill I can use. And actually, sometimes with the right why, the right drive, it's more fun with the right thing. So really love how you distinguish those things. And that thing with, maybe you can just touch for a second, I wasn't there, didn't really know about it at the time the same way, but Hurricane Maria hitting Maria, that was like one of those God reset moments, right? There's the plans, and then God goes, no, reset mode. What was that like of the aftermath? And what have you seen happen in that reset in Puerto Rico?
Well, obviously, when you live in Puerto Rico or you do work down here, you're prepared. It. Hurricane Maria was an exceptionally bad event. I mean, they clocked winds here right where I'm sitting at 240 miles an hour.
Wow.
Nothing survives. So the homes and some of the apartments that we manage and rent out, they were mushed. I mean, the structures are all made of concrete because we're here on the ocean, so you have to have concrete. You don't use wood in anything. But, windows blown out. I mean, one of the houses.
And were you there at the time, Brad? Were you actually in the island when it hit, or were you back on mainland?
No. Thankfully, I flew out the night before, mostly because my kids were yelling at me, telling me I'm completely crazy. A lot of people did stay, and fortunately, there weren't a lot of people that I know that were injured, but it was a terribly traumatic experience. And the aftermath was very, very difficult. So I came down about 10 days afterwards with, a bunch of generators and suitcases full of, food to have that is, stable food and cereal and whatever, and trying to make any difference as I can. And, but that was really traumatic. And, sort of 3 to 4 months after, because Puerto Rico, I mean, for the people that don't know, the hurricane is not a singular event. It takes a long time for things to get back to normal. I would argue they're not normal yet.
Correct. Yeah, there's still problems now. There's still issues with water and waste and education and finances. The ripples go on for decades often with these things.
But Puerto Rico, the area that I live, a place called Palmas del Mar, a country club community. So not a mountainous area in the middle of nowhere, a well-known area. We didn't have power for 2.5 months. That's pretty hard. And your backup generators are not meant for that. They're just, they're not built for that.
And no power means no internet. It means no mobile phone. It means no air conditioning. It means no refrigeration. Those ripples are quite. And were you there? Did you sort of stay on the island and try and sort of work through it?
Yeah. After I got back on the 10th day, and I had made a few trips back and forth. But the ripple effects are. I'm glad you use that terminology, because it's hard to explain to people, like, wait, you have a generator. Like, yeah, you got to get fuel. Guess what? During the hurricane, it sucked up a bunch of muck into its engine, and I need some oil filters and someone who knows how to do that, which is not me, by the way. I've since learned. But all the ripple effects are these generators and these systems are not meant for it. So even if you think you have internet, the reliability is low. Without power, you don't have internet. Without power, the cell phone company, I mean, how do they work if they don't have power? So the ripple effects were great, and how it goes back to sort of this pause that I had was exactly trying to solve for one of those things. I was at a friend's house. We were trying to find diesel for his generator. And, I finally found it with a guy driving down the street and I'm, waving cash in the air, like, stop, please. And then I realized, like, wait a second, what am I doing? Like, this is insane. And at the time, the not-for-profit I was on the board of was really growing. And I was thinking, like, well, my skills might be better used in something else.
Yeah. And I love you had that God moment. And I think the big thing I see is somebody, like a British person, learning very gently and slowly and listening, as my friend Dr. Sorodi says, like not talking a lot, but listening a lot in Puerto Rico. It's brought together people in different communities that are now thinking really differently about strategic architecture for communities, for education, for the food, the housing. So they can build solar that works, these concrete constructions. You see these sort of like not barbed, almost like jail cell houses. And you're like, what's that about? It's like, if there's a hurricane, it stops stuff coming in. Like, oh, that makes sense. Anyway, we're digressing a bit. So, Brad, I love this. This is really good. And one of the things I'd love to get, it's very old question, everybody knows. What's the thing you wish you could send back to sort of younger Brad? Maybe 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old. What's the thing you wish you could sort of tell him, if anything?
Whoa. I'm a bit of a nervous Nelly, so I would tell myself it's all going to turn out fine. So I grew up in suburban Chicago in a very, very nice place, but single mom. She was a school teacher. My mom was a phenomenal person, but more modest means. And I was always nervous, and so consequently, I started working at I think the day I turned 16, I had a good job, and I've always worked. So just reminding yourself that it will all turn out well. Now that I'm 62 years old, I sort of know that. Not only that that I'm at a different point in my life, but sort of the reassurance that, like, okay, stop, take a deep breath, pause, reevaluate, and then make a decision. Not, oh no, I gotta fix it now.
Yeah. And for those in the trading banking world, if ever you think you can't take a breath for 2 seconds, that's usually when you make the wrong decision, right? You're like, sell everything. Oh no, yes, no, And in that moment, everything changes. So that's such a valuable lesson. And I'm the same almost. We came from very little money, very little resources. Dad died at a young age, mum remarried. And that mindset of where'd I get a dollar from? And you sort of look back and think that sort of trying to survive on a dollar doesn't get you thinking bigger. The worrying about every friend, how are they doing all the time, doesn't get you in that nice calm state where you can take a breath, enjoy the ocean, enjoy a barbecue. And I'm really grateful, by the way, for Davin and Puerto Rico for that, because it was different energy that's not America, right? It's sort of a lovely blend of Spanish, Taino, but there is that space of Puerto Rico that gets me going, you know what? Okay, the pelicans will catch the fish. We can pause. It's okay. And especially when I was there the last few months with you guys, everything happening globally, we'll leave the politics out. But my other friend, not on island, were like, get on a plane, leave, panic. It was like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm okay. Take a breath, take a beat, and get through it. Love that advice. Pretty helpful, Brad. And if you think back about the most challenging times you had to pause, stop, reset, what helped you navigate those? What's the thing that got you through? Was it friends and family? Was it sort of spiritual? What's the thing that got you through those challenging nights of the soul?
I'm not a spiritual guy, although I do believe in. I'm Jewish, but we're not practicing family. So that's not it. It's really always been my family and my friend group. I feel so lucky. I still have like some of my closest friends from high school, and in fact, one of them I've known since I was 2, allegedly. I don't remember, but apparently we were friends. Through my entire life, so 60 years of friendship and trust. The guys that I worked with in the pits, 3 or 4 guys are to this day still my closest and trusted friends. In fact, my business partner on a small hedge fund we just started is a guy I stood next to for almost 30 years. The trust is just, you build that relationship. So I really rely on my friends and my family. I have a wonderful wife who I've been with for God, almost 40 years and 3 great kids. So it's your circle. And I really try, I consciously try to make an effort to reach out, to visit, to grab a cup of coffee, to grab a beer. Even as your life gets more complicated, and your kids and your life and this and that, try to take the time to just make that phone call, make that text, say, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? Let's go grab a beer. I find that to be really, really helpful, because that's sort of what grounds you and makes you make better decisions.
No, I really love that. It's why it was a challenge for physical other reasons to go to Puerto Rico both years, but was worth it to start to reconnect with people. I've not seen for 10 years. With Facebook and LinkedIn, it's connected, but it's not connected. There's something about breaking bread, shaking hands, and going, how are you doing? Or just sitting with somebody for 10 minutes that you don't get over the phone. I'm not very woo, a little bit woo-woo. There's that energy that you get off somebody, right? The sort of physical being around people. I'm a big believer in books and movies for helping, like, on those days, sort of get either inspired or resetting. Are you a book movie guys or not really?
I like movies. I read, but I read probably less than I used to, even though I probably have more time, only because I get more tired at night. But I'm right now reading a book that I think the Anderson Cooper's book on his family lineage, the Vanderbilt.
Super interesting, right?
Yeah, great grandson of Cornelius Grant Vanderbilt, or some direct lineage. I find it really interesting because it's very historical, but it kind of pops back and forth, and what a great American story, and yet there was also lots of ups and downs. So when you read those, I like history. You read those things, you realize, well, it wasn't all easy. Some things people accomplished makes me feel like, well, don't complain. I should really just power through it, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, we had the 80th anniversary of VE Day recently, and a lot of these, we call them first world problems, like my internet speed just 200 megabytes today. It's like they had no food and we're being bombed. Let's just get our priorities straight here, guys, and be grateful for the small things that matter, because when you have that, then you can build, right? Those traders, they make money, they lose money. You have to sort of get back in the game, another trade, start rebuilding again, and in business as well, right? Some people listening in may be going through those reset times, right? What would be your suggestion? Somebody going through either relationships break up, the business has gone wrong, or they're like, it's time for a reset. What's your top tip for somebody in that sort of reset mode?
It would absolutely be take time to think. Obviously, one of the things you should do is reach out to your friends, to former business associates, to family, and get advice and talk it through. But also take time to think, because sometimes the answers to problems just need a little time to mature. You need to stir the pot a little bit and let it simmer. So taking time to think. In Puerto Rico, it's pretty easy to do that, because I can go outside and sit and read a book and take a walk on the beach, and it's interesting how some of those the best decisions you make are the ones that take the longest.
Really great suggestions there. And actually, I found that this year, giving myself time to actually have a holiday, I still worked, right? The nature of, you have a phone, you're working. But actually, to give yourself time to, my favorite thing was on the lagoon in Condado in the evening, at like 9 o'clock at night, just floating around, and was like, this is good, away from the crazy, away from the bustle. And it's so hard to do in the modern world. It's very hard to actually get proper calm space where nobody's like, hey, have you heard of this thing? Just actually time just to be.
Yeah. I also think, and I'm certainly not the first person to say that, you need to turn your phone off sometimes. In fact, with Davin, our mutual friend, there's a hill just sort of about a mile away from the resort. It's it's within the resort, but anyway, you got to get there. It's about an hour and a half hike up a hill, and you're overlooking the sea. And I try intentionally to make sure I leave my phone in the car. That hour is just talking with a friend. You can be talking about anything. Sometimes it's about politics. With Davin, it's always about interesting things and his marketing background. He's obviously a phenomenal marketer. Sometimes it's just one of the guys is the insane Kansas City Chiefs fan, and all he wants to talk about is the Chiefs, which, is not that interesting to me, but, it's like, fine, we can always talk about football. But taking the time and unplugging, because kind of as you said a second ago with the first world, like you have to really remind yourself as your pepperoni pizza comes with sausage on it, like, all right, it's a first world problem.
Yeah. And like, 100 years ago, I couldn't do this. There was no phone. It was a letter. I'd write a letter. A week later, it might arrive. You might think for a week, then write back. Everything, the communication was a bit slower. There was more space versus, I mean, you were on the trading exchange, right? Things happened almost seconds. And in that environment, unless you're calm and used to it, it's really crazy. I worked in banking on the trading floors, but more the structuring houses, right? And the first time in Morgan Stanley on the trading floor, it freaked me out. Just being around them going, buy, sell, what? It's like, I'm going to go have a coffee because the energy of that floor was really intense.
Yeah. It was, I mean, I can reminisce and say it was really, really fun, and being in there and the screaming and the yelling part, as hostile as it was. And there's always stories of guys who were not good guys. But to this day, I would still say that most of the people, and I was in the S&P pit, which was probably 300 guys. I mean, it was huge. And I traded in many pits and financials. I used to trade D-marks. There used to be something called a Deutsche Mark, by the way. And I traded the oils in New York. But a lot of those guys had so much talent and so much brain power, and actually so much honesty, because everything we were doing was a verbal contract, and your word was your bond. And it was sort of group mentality that enforced that. But to this day, if I have, and I've done business with plenty of guys I used to trade with, it's like, oh, you say you're going to do that? Okay, let's just shake hands. We're done.
I want to underline that though, right? That's the core of a lot of communities. The Jewish faith had that at the heart of it. The trading floors, British business was that. Because if you couldn't trust them to keep their word, you don't do it again. Once I say, is that a fresh apple? And it's like not, I don't go back to that greengrocer shop again. That was my grandfather's side. He had a little, very small fruit and veg shop. And it was like, is this fresh? Yes, it was. There's always that sort of subtlety of business, right? Especially when you're negotiating. But there is also, no, I promised you that, I delivered it, not this, I never said that. It's like, you did. And we're going, ironically, back to that world of everything being recorded, everything transcribed, but context is so important. There is that reality that goes on. I'm just curious if you can share, what was your best trade and your worst trade, and how did you handle the bad trade experience?
Oh, well, I can tell you my worst trade. That was easy. I was fairly new trader. It was about maybe 6 months or 8 months in, and there's a sort of an adage in the pit as you're learning is you got to get through the first year. Don't look at your first year. Don't think I have to make money or I have to, well, you obviously have to watch how much you lose. You have, only a certain number of dollars in your account. But I remember making a bad trade, and it was about not getting out and getting married to it, because the amount that I was going to lose was probably more than I could have afforded as an intelligent trade based on my skill and my size. I remember walking out of the pit and going into the bathroom and washing on my face and saying, this is not it. This is not your I'm finished time. And went back in and battled it out, and good things happened. So that was definitely the worst kind of and the best. But the best trade I ever made was there was a hedge fund that was going bust, and the market was down a bazillion points. And I just sort of had this realization that this is not really a market moving event, and got long, stayed long, and it ended up being a really good days. Because also kind of going back to the pause reset thinking is, okay, headline, and we're seeing it. I mean, we're seeing it on the news 1,000 times a day now with tariff announcements. They're on, they're off, or attack, all these things that move the market, and they should. But you also have to take a step back and say to yourself, all right, well, is it the end of the American economy? No, I don't think so. Is it a disaster? And on the euphoric end of it, has something changed? Is people going to buy more widgets because of it? Probably not. So it kind of keeps you in the good zone, which is never way too high and never way too low.
Yeah, and this is where it's so important. I was very lucky to be around some very smart fundamental traders, quant traders, and other stuff. And you start realizing the market doesn't move logically. There's this weird emotion, like what everybody doing isn't what it should be doing, but they are doing it. And that's not the same. Credit derivatives, you might know a little bit about from the old days. The actual risk of actual things happening is the actual risk, but that is not the price of the insurance. So this is weird thing of like fundamentals can go a bit weird. I really love talking today, Brad. I'm really excited we got this to connect a bit with you guys live in Puerto Rico again, or back in London around the world. Before we wrap up, Autonomy Works, how do they get, like, whether it's that charity, that project, that nonprofit, that business, how can they learn more about it? How can they come be helpful, and not in a sort of a condescending way? How can they genuinely sort of get to engage and work with you guys?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Brad Cohen. And, if you put in the word Autonomy Works also, you'll for sure find me, but I don't think there's that many Brad Cohens. Or the website is autonomy.works. So very simple, autonomy.works. As I said before, being philanthropic doesn't necessarily mean writing a check, please do. But maybe it means, hey, Brad, I know this guy and he's got so I want to just really briefly touch on what we do. We do process-oriented work. So we have 80 people working in different projects for companies. So whether it be QA of websites, we do Granger's our largest client. We QA their 3 million item website, to make sure that each item, which is mostly industrial machinery, every attribution of those different machines has to be checked. We work in digital ad space. We do ad ops, which is checking digital ads, sending them to the client so they know that they were really correct. And then we have a team working in a factory where we put together parts kits for outdoor furniture, really tapping into the autism of perfection, of focus, because those parts kits, even though nominally the price of a bolt is really not very much, right? But think of how expensive it is if that bolt isn't there. You're returning it and you're mad at the company and you spend an afternoon in your on your backyard. So we do several different businesses where it's a process that can be outsourced and done in Chicago, Illinois. And anyway, that's it. So you can contact me that way. And thank you, Simon. It was really fun talking to you.
Well, no, and this is what I saw. You shared on stage. It wasn't a strange business opportunity. It was actually a really cool story that was real. And there was something about what you were sharing was like, there's more to talk about here. I don't know if you've seen the new Ben Affleck movie, The Accountant movie. You seen that one yet? It is like he's spinning that sort of, they run around with guns. That isn't how most of us work as accountants or autism people. But there is a bit about these special skills, solving problems, thinking differently. Some of the most creative people out of the UK are neurodiverse, autism, Asperger's, and have actually become billionaires when the right mentors have gone, what's that idea? Got it. We can get that built. And the right team comes around. So that sort of team aspect, community aspect, I love you bringing up for life and business. Brad, as we wrap up, two things. What's the last thought you want to leave with, right? They're saying, I love Brad. That thing he said was fab. What's the sort of the Bradism that to remember? And how do they get LinkedIn, I guess? Is that the best way to get hold of you? That's my sort of two questions to wrap up the show today.
Okay, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Brad Cohen, or through the website at autonomy.works. I just try to remain positive, and I really believe that it's what's been really life-changing for me is first volunteering and then actually working, and now I work part-time, so I don't really my social work, my social mission stuff is a side fun. I consider it my fun gig, but you can do good, and also there's also something. There's so much in it for you. And particularly people my age who have had, a good career doing something else. So many people I know are doing similar things where they're volunteering or they're investing, or maybe they're getting a job in some sort of social mission about something they care about. One thing I found to be very profound, most of our clients at Autonomy Works, there's a personal connection to autism. So I mentioned Granger, there's a personal connection. The parts kits that we put together is for a company called Suncast, a huge company. They make outdoor sheds and all kinds of furniture. One of the senior people has a kid on the spectrum, so they understand that, and that's why they reach out. I understand that. In the end of the day, we still have to do a good job for the price, and that is something we accomplish.
No, I love that, Brad. So the reminders about community, reaching out, and such What I love, Brad, like you're older than me, your energy is like 20 years younger. So whatever you're having, we want some. I think it's Puerto Rico. I've only been back here for 2 weeks. I miss it. The weather's great. The people's great. Want to learn about the cruise? Check out with Brad. Check out me. This is the San Juan Social Club cruise. Not advertising. It's very a interesting group of people. But that's kind of the crux of life in business. Real community, reach out. And whether you have no friends today or a million friends today, just keep being you. The world needs you. And Brad, thank you for being on the show today. Absolute pleasure, sir.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Once again, I'm Simon Hedley. Thank you for listening to this episode of Pause, Stop, Reset, which is brought to you by the team at simonx.com and published by thesimpleidea.com. So you get maximum value and to access all the bonuses and gifts, make sure to head to pausestopReset.com, register and explore the portal. And if you're looking for great people, check out onesmartnetwork.com. If you've enjoyed the show, do give us a positive review, subscribe, and share this episode with friends. I can't wait to share our next episode with you. Till then, remember you can always choose to pause, stop, reset.